Hey friend, welcome. I need to tell you something, and I'm not going to wait for the perfect moment to say it, because deep down, you're already ready to hear it. God is proud of you, not because you always said the right things. Not because you smiled when you wanted to scream. And not even because you held on to faith when everything around you tried to crush it. No, God is proud of you because you kept going. You kept evolving. Even when everything in your world whispered, or screamed, that it'd be easier to just stop, and maybe you've never heard that before. Maybe no one told you how strong you were when you made the right choice, even with shaky hands. Maybe no one noticed when you gave everything you had and still didn't get what you needed in return. When you chose love in a moment where revenge would have felt louder, easier, more satisfying, but heaven noticed. That's what I need you to hold on to today. Not a single good thing you've done has gone unnoticed. Not by God. You've been walking through life with a kind of quiet spiritual integrity that doesn't ask for recognition. You've been breaking cycles, healing family lines, holding peace in spaces where anger used to be the only language. You've been making choices that hurt now, but heal forever, and every time you did that, without fanfare, without validation, you were building something sacred. Something eternal. See, God doesn't look at the surface. Divine favor doesn't show up because you performed your pain well. This isn't a test where suffering earns you points that you're not being celebrated for keeping your struggles hidden. You're being honored because you stood in your truth, even in the storm. You stayed real when everything pushed you to perform. You didn't dim your light just to fit into places that mistook your humility for weakness. You felt everything. And still chose love, not the easy, Instagram quote kind of love. The real kind. The kind that's a choice, not an emotion. And that, my friend, is rare. There's a sacred strength in someone who walks through fire and still refuses to become what burned them. Someone who can look cruelty in the face and still say, no. This stops with me. That's not something you can fake. It's not something a sermon can teach or a book can describe, but you're living it. Whether you know it or not, you are carrying a kind of power that most people will never even touch. You've shown God something about faith that even the most religious folks might miss. Because your faith wasn't formed in comfort. It was shaped in the chaos. In those in-between places where nothing made sense. And yet, you still stayed in the story. That's why this new season of your life feels different. It's not just your time in some vague spiritual sense. It's alignment. It's your truth finally ringing louder than your trials. You earned this shift in silence. In those late nights when no one saw your tears. In those quiet moments where choosing self-control looked like weakness to people who didn't understand your strength. In those choices that made zero sense to the world, but were absolutely right for your soul. And now something is shifting. The light you've been cultivating behind the scenes is starting to ripple out into the world. That peace you used to fight for is showing up with less resistance. People are noticing something in you, even if they can't explain it. That's not luck. That's not random. That's what happens when a soul doesn't quit and listen. I get it. You might still feel unsure. You might not fully trust what's happening. You might be wondering, is this joy really mine? You've spent so long surviving that the idea of peace without pain might feel foreign. Almost like a language you forgot how to speak, but it's coming back now. Not because you finally manifested it perfectly. Not because you prayed the exact right words, no, because even in your doubts, God never doubted you. God knew exactly what was being planted inside you. The moment your spirit entered this world, it carried depth, sensitivity, wisdom, strength. A voice that could shake walls and heal hearts, all at the same time. You are what healing looks like, in motion. You're what integrity looks like in a world obsessed with filters and performance. You're a soul that remembers its divine source, even when the world tried to convince you to forget. And look, I'm not going to lie to you, it's been a rough road. Some of your biggest transformations came in the hardest moments. Nights when you couldn't sleep. Days when getting out of bed felt like a battle. Moments where retaliation would have felt so right, but instead, You released, and that version of you, the one that didn't quit, didn't give in, didn't retaliate, that's the one that heaven is celebrating the loudest, not the perfect you. Not the polished, put together, say all the right things you, but the honest you. The you who wrestled with life and didn't let go. The you who stayed when it would have been easier to walk away. The you who surrendered without quitting. You don't need to fight for a seat at God's table, you've already built one, with your choices. Your pain. Your healing. Your growth. Your refusal to settle. You've laid every brick with the kind of love that can't be taught, it has to be lived, and now. That seed is being prepared. Not because God is finally showing up, but because now, you're ready to receive it. So here you are, standing at the edge of a life that finally recognizes you. And yeah, I know. It might feel a little strange, you've spent so much time fighting for scraps, working for peace, burning every inch of your joy, that when things start to flow, when the doors open without you banging on them, it can feel almost unreal. But let me say this clearly, this is your moment, not just for rest, but for joy, not just for making it through, but for fully expanding. For thriving. There's a big difference between survival and being blessed. You've mastered survival. You've learned how to hold yourself together when everything was falling apart, but now you're about to remember what it feels like to receive, without guilt. Without struggle, without questioning whether or not you've earned it. This kind of shift doesn't happen just because enough time passed, it happens because your alignment has finally caught up with your identity, the version of you that kept playing small to make others comfortable. That version is fading. The part of you that used to shrink just to avoid standing out. You're not there anymore, because here's the truth, your presence is powerful, you're not just a flicker of hope in someone else's darkness. You're living proof that a soul can stay soft and remain unbreakable. That a person can lose everything, status, friends, direction, and still choose to rebuild from a place of love. Not bitterness, that's not weakness. That's power with roots. You carry a grace that challenges people. A truth that doesn't demand attention, but commands it, and now. The universe is responding, not just in subtle signs or spiritual goosebumps, but in real, tangible shifts, in doors opening where there used to be only walls, in opportunities that feel natural instead of forced, in relationships that don't drain you just so you can feel seen. You're walking into a season where things just begin to click, and not because life suddenly got easier, but because you got clearer. You didn't cut corners to get here, you didn't fake it, you didn't cheat your way into favor, you lived every inch of this story. You carried every part of it, the messy chapters, the silent nights, the questions that had no answers, and here's something important, you don't owe anyone an explanation, you don't need to explain how you got here. You don't need to unpack your scars for someone else to respect your strength. You don't have to perform your past in order to justify your present, let them wonder, let them speculate, let them ask how you did it. Because God saw everything, every prayer you whispered, every time you stayed silent when you could have spoken out of pain, every time you refused to go back to the version of you that begged for crumbs when you were born to sit at the table, you were seen. You were counted, and now the results are rising up around you, not in the ways the world claps for, but in the ways that matter. In your peace, in your calm, in your knowing, you've grown in ways no algorithm could measure. You've evolved in spaces no camera could ever capture. You've matured in ways that don't show up in likes or views, but show up in your soul. From this point forward, things will feel different. Not because the world suddenly changed overnight, but because you did. Your discernment is sharper now, you no longer chase what confuses you, you don't entertain what drains you. You don't say yes to energy that comes dressed as opportunity but smells like exhaustion, because now, you know what peace actually feels like, and that's the thing, once you taste peace, chaos doesn't feel like normal anymore, that you're not above anyone. But you're done living beneath yourself. That's what spiritual maturity looks like. It's not this big dramatic awakening. It's the quiet decision, made again and again,